The shooting range. In this episode, pages of history, mysterious kinship of two hostile planes, tips and tricks, bombing in mixed battles, and metal beasts, the American, and also a little bit Japanese Phantom. Today we're looking at the new US fighter jet recently added to the game, the F-4E Phantom II. The Americans received a lot of aerial combat experience in the sky above Vietnam, which made them realize they shouldn't have abandoned artillery weapons on the earlier versions of the new fighter in the first place, especially so because early rockets were expensive to produce and not at all reliable. They tried to solve this problem using a suspended cannon container, but it had a long way to go in terms of firing accuracy. In addition, the cannon occupied the pylon that could be used to suspend bombs or rockets, and the container itself increased the machine's drag. Therefore, in 1964, the McDonnell Company began developing a new Phantom, and cannon weapons were integrated into its design from the start. The aircraft received the E index and later became the most mass-produced modification of the F-4. The power plant of the machine consists of two turbojet engines outfitted with afterburner chambers. The wings and the fuselage house protected fuel tanks, and we can find some flares on the inner pylons of the wing. The aircraft's nose is noticeably longer than that of its predecessor. It has a radar and a 6-barreled 20mm cannon with 640 rounds of ammunition. When it comes to suspended weapons, here we've got 4 AIM-9J air-to-air missiles, 2 AGM-12C rockets, 285 Mighty Mouse unguided rockets, 60 Zuni fragmentation rockets, and bombs ranging from 500 to 2,000 pounds. Also, there's still the option of mounting 3 cannon containers. With them, the Phantom becomes a record breaker in terms of 1-second burst mass, over 52 kilograms. In air combat, it's usually worth taking 4 air-to-air missiles. They're perfectly capable of dealing with even the maneuvering targets. And if anybody dares to launch a missile at yourself, use your flares in short series, while also changing your flight trajectory. When you run out of missiles, it's time for forward-facing cannon. Thanks to its convenient placement, it's much easier to shoot than the one from the previous modification of this aircraft. There isn't a lot of ammo, but it should still be enough to ground several opponents. But the machine reaches its full potential in mixed battles. No other top-tier fighter in the game can boast of such a variety of suspended weapons, and the huge arsenal is complemented by a ballistic computer. Thanks to it, you can attack ground targets from above and avoid the risk of hitting the ground. Our first priority is enemy AA tech. At the very beginning of the battle, it makes sense to turn away a bit and gain altitude. 5 kilometers would be enough. Then fly towards the enemy's respawn point, get the thrust down, and go into a steep dive, looking for anti-aircraft machines. Then drop the bombs and instantly leave at ground-hugging altitude. Remember to drop the bombs only at speeds below Mach 1. Your air brakes will come in handy in order not to exceed that limit. Having moved away from the battlefield, climb up again and repeat the attack. If you want to use unguided rockets, the course of action is similar, except that it's better to launch several of them at one target at once. On the other hand, unlike bombs, rockets can also be launched at supersonic speed. When the enemy team loses all of its AA tech, you can finally take the aircraft to lower altitudes. The main thing to remember is that the Phantom is a heavy machine. It's reluctant to exit the dive, especially if you haven't already used all of your suspended weapons. Then there is the F4EJ modification from the Japanese tech tree. That deserves a separate mention. These licensed vehicles produced in Japan have some differences compared to the American version. For example, they have a smaller set of weapons. There are no guided air-to-air surface missiles, and none of the heavier 1,000 and 2,000 pound bombs. The Japanese version also doesn't have additional slat sections, which slightly reduces maneuverability at low speeds. On the other hand, this machine is a bit lighter, and therefore faster than the American one. In all other cases, it's the same Phantom II, one of the most menacing and heavily armed fighters that has ever climbed into the sky of War Thunder. You know how in TV sitcoms characters turn out to have somewhat unexpected relatives? There are, of course, quite usual dads, moms, brothers, and nephews, but sometimes there's a guy who suddenly turns out to be the ex-son-in-law of that character's second cousin twice removed, which causes some unusual tension in the recently extended family. Well, the same thing sometimes happens with aircraft as well. No kidding. Here, take a look at this. There are two fighters, the Italian Re 2005 and the American P-47 Thunderbolt. You might ask, well, what do these vehicles have in common anyway? They're made in different countries, hostile ones too. They were created to fit different military doctrines and different combat missions as well. And yet, these two fighters are almost like brothers. Well, okay, cousins. An Italian aircraft designer, Roberto Longhi, soon to be the creator of the RE 2005, had been working in the USA for a long time, and he was directly involved in the creation of a whole series of American planes, including the Seversky P-35. At the end of 1935, he became seriously ill and returned to Italy to recuperate. And then he stayed there, tying his further professional path with Count Caproni's Aircraft Building Corporation. After that, he visited the US only a couple of times on a task to acquire the license to manufacture the Seversky P-35 or the Curtiss P-36. However, his attempts were unsuccessful, and when in 1939 the Re 2000 had its first flight in Italy, its external resemblance to the P-35 was so noticeable that it almost led to an investigation in the United States, the one involving the FBI and all that, because they literally suspected Alexander de Seversky of selling the technical documentation to the Italians without informing the military. But it turned out very quickly that he didn't. It was all Roberto Longhi's own doing, working side by side with Antonio Alessi, a remarkable aircraft technologist. He managed to recreate the main technical and aerodynamic solutions of the P-35 from his memory, and at the same time to borrow some good ideas from other American aircraft as well. For example, the landing gear design of the P-36, or Seversky's elliptical wing, which was very promising, but also extremely complex in terms of design. By the way, that wing was the very reason why neither the P-35 nor the RE 2000 ever went into mass production. These fighters were only successful enough in the Swedish Air Force, where they both served almost until the 50s. But we got a bit distracted. The cousins. Both the P-35 and its Italian twin, the Re 2000, were being developed rapidly, but their evolutionary paths went in different directions. Seversky's fighters went on with radial aircraft engines and, moreover, got outfitted with very well-placed turbochargers, first on the P-43 Lancer and later on the formidable P-47 Thunderbolt. But the Italian Re 2000 planes by Longhi and Alessi went away from that. Very soon, the designer duo switched the 14-cylinder radial engine for a licensed German inline option, the Daimler-Benz 601, that went to the Re 2001, and later they installed the powerful DB605 on the magnificent RE 2005. As a result, The American Thunderbolt and the Italian Sagittario looked absolutely different at first glance, but one look at their elliptical wings and their kinship became undeniable. And sure, the RE 2005 was only assembled 35 times, which seems like a joke compared to the thousands of the P-47 and its various modifications. But these two machines still had to face each other in fratricidal fights. The German Luftwaffe gladly used the Italian fighters in the air defense of Berlin and in protection of oil fields in Romania that US bombers attacked with particular fierceness. And those very Thunderbolts were often covering those very bombers. So, when you hear that any war is essentially fratricidal and all people are brothers and sisters, remember, it's not just about people. Turns out, it's about planes, too. The winner of mixed battles can't always be determined on the ground. A cleverly dropped bomb can knock an enemy out of a well-defended position or destroy a tank that the Allied weapons can't cope with. In this episode, we'll talk about the best ways to support your team's ground forces from the air. First of all, keep in mind that you'll be the most accurate with your bombs in a dive. It doesn't really matter at what angle you approach the target, be it 20 degrees or 90. It depends on the particular aircraft. Basically, it's whatever you need to be able to turn it away from the ground instead of crashing into it, after you drop your presence on your target's head. In any case, when choosing an aircraft for mixed battles, your priority picks are the ones that can actually dive bomb. Look at the B-17, for example. It's an excellent bomber on its own, but it's far from perfect for our purposes. Better take some fighter jets that can carry bombs, or actual dive bombers. For most of them, the optimum diving angle would be about 45 degrees. We advise you to get used to your chosen aircraft in arcade test flight in order to learn how to determine where your bombs will fall when you drop them in different ways. The bomb targeting marker will help you get the hang of it, just like with the leading marker that helps newcomers learn how to shoot at air targets. You'll probably notice that when the aircraft only starts to dive, the marker is located roughly underneath your propeller. But then it begins to slowly shift towards the point between the propeller and your cannon sight. The faster you go from there, and the more you increase the diving angle, the closer this marker gets to that crosshair. Those are exactly your main points of reference for dropping bombs. What else could you improve your accuracy? Reaching the minimum distance to the target before dropping. You have a lot more chance of hitting an enemy tank if you drop your bomb almost at point-blank range rather than from 1,500 meters away.
But it's important to realize the limits in approaching the enemy. The explosion can destroy your own plane along with the target.
For such occasions, you can set the bomb fuse delay. This is done in the same menu where you pick your vehicles during the battle. Keep in mind that if the delay is too long, the enemy tank will have a good chance of escaping while the timer is ticking. That's why it's important to pick the best combination of fuse delay and drop altitude every time, instead of hitting the extremes. For example, for a 500 kilogram bomb that you can drop from 200 to 300 meters, a 1 second delay will suffice. The smaller bombs, such as these 50 kilogram ones, deserve special attention. They require a lot of skill, but you can take more of them with you, which potentially means getting more frags. So, what's so special about them? Well, first of all, the smaller bombs often bounce off the target. That means you need to set the fuse delay to a minimum. The optimal way is dropping them from 150 to 200 meters with an assault fuse. At this altitude, you won't be threatened by your own blast wave, and the fuse will detonate immediately at the moment of contact, successfully hitting the selected target. All that remains is to wish you success in the bombing of your enemies and proceed to the next section of the show, where we will answer some of your questions that you ask in the comments. The first message today comes from Turtle Gamer. Gaijin has better landing skills than me. I can't even land a fighter on a carrier, but they land that behemoth of a plane. Thank you for your kind words. If you want to improve your landing skills on any machine to perfection, we also recommend checking out the channel of Smigol Time, especially his Challenges playlist. The author manages to perfectly land on basically any machine imaginable, so there's definitely something to learn from him. Also, there's Iron Armenian's channel. Search for carrier landing in his tags as well. Challenger 2 asks, can you add a "you're welcome" phrase to the voice chats, please? Something tells us that you're talking about radio messages, not the voice chat. Anyway, no promises on whether it's going to appear in the game or not, but we'll 100% pass your proposal to the dev team. Then there's a question from Hilsey4. Every time I turn off the helicopter engine, it restarts automatically. So how do I shut down it completely? The reason for that may be that you're playing in arcade battles. Here, you can indeed only turn off your engine on the ground, and in the air it'll be restarting over and over again. Try switching to realistic battles. There, you'll get complete control over your vehicle, including the ability to turn the engine off while in the air. Janimation has a point here. The amount of times you have mentioned boom and zoom, but you've never done a tutorial on boom and zoom and how to evade such an attack. Do one. Well, we've got a video on the channel that's called Best Aircraft for Boom and Zoom. But you're right, we haven't exactly covered this topic in our tactics and strategy section. And it's a great idea to make one. Keep your eyes peeled for the coming episodes. Sorushirin wants to know, is it possible to add blood effects to the game? I really love your voice, sir. Well, thank you for the compliment. And as for the blood effects, sadly, no. War Thunder is a game about the battles between vehicles, and we are fundamentally against adding more violence to it than we really have to. And the last question for today was sent by Gus Gelains. Where can I express my ideas to the developers to give them a few ideas on what they can change to possibly improve the game? You can do it right here, in the comments section under the videos. We may not answer every comment, but rest assured we do read them all. And we're very happy when you share your ideas on improving and evolving the game with us and propose interesting topics for the next videos of our show. Once again, that's it for today. You've been watching The Shooting Range by Gaijin Entertainment, which premieres every Sunday at 4 p.m. GMT or noon Eastern Time. Well, COVID-19 won't prevent you from subscribing to the channel, clicking the bell, leaving a like, and may the third be with you. Wait, no, that doesn't sound right. Anyway, we'll see you in exactly 1 week. So stay home, stay safe, and share your thoughts with us in the comments below.